Happy Tuesday, everybody. As hopefully you received notice, we're going into finish with 4 Tuesdays that are all deep dives instead of the hot topic. We believe we've got some real key issues to finish out the year with. And so we're going to be going up to 1 hour. And today we bring you here on the 19th of November, Lake Orion branch manager extraordinaire, with our Coldwell Banker professional side is Mr. Peter Toering. So give it up for Peter. Woo woo. We give it that kind of stuff. It's all yours, buddy.
Everybody. Hi. Just a very, very quick background about myself. For those of you who don't know me, I came from the Coldwell Banker Realty side of the house about 6 months ago. Couldn't be happier to be here. I was a full-time producing agent before that. I've been in the industry about 10 years. That's all of the better parts of my family, my wife and I have 3 daughters under 3. So other than that, I have nothing going on at my house. But I've been with the Coldwell Banker brand basically my entire adult life. So I was 22 or 23 years old when I signed on with Coldwell Banker Romanial in Macomb Township, and then took over Coldwell Banker Realty in Clarkston, and then have been in Lake Orion, and couldn't be happy to be at HRC. So that's enough about me. So a couple things that we're going to go through today. The whole point of this is winning competitive listings and then also getting them sold. So what we're going to go through is what actually happens before and during the listing appointment. Now, we're not going to talk CMAs. We're not going to talk necessarily pricing strategies. But what actually, if you know that you're going into a competitive listing appointment, what can you do to make sure that you win that appointment? And then once you have gained that appointment, especially if you have improper pricing during the listing, what can you then do about that? So a couple of notes about what the appointment I do. And just as a note, Darwin said he'll be monitoring the chat. I just can't monitor it. I'm going to try to have it up on my screen, but yeah, you know what? I can put it on my screen too. So feel free to chat in questions. I can't see all of you, but feel free to chat in questions. I do what I call a 1 or a modified 2-step listing appointment. I know that, again, if you were in the room with me, I'd ask for a show of hands saying who does what. For those of you who don't know, 1 step means everything is done in that 1 to 1.5 hours while you're there the first time. A 2-step is we're going to go over certain information now and then maybe certain information later. I think that there are benefits to doing both styles, but I have found the big thing with a 2-step appointment is the whole purpose of a 2-step is that your pricing and your commission and your documents are handled in step 2. And a lot of sellers, they want to handle some semblance of pricing in step 1. So this is kind of a 1 or modified 2-step. So the very first things that I'm going to do, a couple things I'm going to do to prepare for the listing is, and Darwin, I'll try and send out copies of the one that I use, is a pre-listing interview. And I use the pre-listing interview and packet that are used from the Ninja system, if you're familiar with that at all. And one of the things that they are asking, number 1 is, what are the decision makers in that listing? So I never want to show up and I've got a husband or a wife and then I'm missing husband or wife. And they say, well, I'd love to list with you, Peter, but I've got to talk to my husband. I've got to talk to my wife. We want to eliminate those things, especially if you're dealing with a trust or an estate or something like that. Decision makers are always a good thing to know. A pre-listing packet. I'll be honest with you, this has now become a little bit more optional to me. I know we like to teach this. And I don't have it in front of me, but I believe the pre-listing packet that we have includes some of the listing documents. It includes some information about either Coldwell Banker or C21, depending on what side of the house you're on. And I think it is a good idea for us to provide some of that information up front so that you're not walking in either blind to them or they're not necessarily blind to you. I always like to have a confirmation text, call, or video text. And we never just say, hi, Marjorie, does 3 o'clock still work for you? The text looks more like, hi, Larry, I'm really excited to meet you and your wife at 3 p.m. today at your house at 123 Main Street. Please let me know if there's any information additionally I need to know. Now, as part of the pre-listing interview, I will ask the question, and I know that this is a little bit controversial. I ask two questions. I will ask, are you considering for sale by owner? And I know that we don't necessarily want to hit that if we don't have to, but the reason I do is why would I not be prepared for that going in? If they're considering for sale by owner, I can do some extra research. I can have those statistics available. Like the NAR statistic just came out, I believe only about 6% of listings that sell are for sale by owner. Have some of that information ready. And then I also like to know about a competing agent. So the last stat I saw, this I think was 2019's NAR stat, was about 75% of agents, or I'm sorry, of sellers will pick their listing agent without interviewing multiple agents, which means only approximately 25% of those appointments were competitive. I think that we will see that change as we go forward. I think that we're going to see more of those. Now, I don't want to make this about commission, anything like that. I just think that it's going to become a more competitive environment. So one of the things that I want to do is I always ask the question, you know, Mrs. Seller, Mr. Seller, who else are you interviewing? They may tell you, they may not, but if they do tell you, if I find out I'm going up against Bob Smith from ABC Realty, one of the things I can do is geomap. So I can look at where have my sales compared to his. Hey, I've sold more houses in the Waterstone subdivision in Oxford than he has, or the production in general. Hey, I've got more experience, more production. And then the other thing too is the brand. If you are brand new to the business, or maybe you've been out of sales for a minute, you can lean very heavily that Century 21 and that Coldwell Banker branding is a very heavy hitter. And there's, as long as you know how to use it, if you're going up against somebody from EXP, Keller Williams, whatever, using that brand even can be very powerful. Another thing that I do before I even arrive is I check what I call the extra properties. So I will have a list of not only my comparables, but I will try to grab everything that's sold in that neighborhood within 24 months. And I just print out a Real Comp or My Real Source single line grid. And the reason I do that is, has anyone ever been sitting in a listing appointment and they mentioned, well, you know, I'm 2,500 square feet and my neighbor who's 2,300 square feet sold 3 months ago and they sold for a higher price than you're giving me. And all of a sudden you find out later that that property sold 18 months ago and it was 3,000 square feet. That's happened to me once. I'm like, okay, I'm never going to have that happen again. I'm going to be prepared. And then I will also drive that neighborhood to see, do I have any signs in the yard that I might not have seen before? Is there a for sale by owner sign that I somehow missed? I want to make sure I know what's going on in that neighborhood. Is the road being, I just talked to an agent who they showed up for the listing appointment, the road was being torn up. You know, you want to know those things that are going on in the neighborhood. Be in the right mindset. This is already your listing and arrive early. I think that's goes without saying. And then this appointment is always an interview. So I don't care if it's your mom, your brother, your aunt. This is always an interview. I always show up prepared. I always show up. If I'm going on a listing interview, 99% of the time I'm dressed up, I'm looking the part. And I never take that for granted. If you've ever had a listing that's been lost, your mom didn't list with you, your aunt didn't list with you, you know, kind of the pain of that. And I always say, I never want you to list with me because I am your X, Y, and Z. I want you to list with me because I'm the best at what I do, which I think is true. One other disclaimer I did not give here. The vast majority of these things in the listing presentation that I use are already being done for you or are very easy to do. I like to do that because every agent's going to have a little bit of their own unique blend of marketing, but I want to focus on the things that are very widespread that we do as a company that nobody else does or very few else are doing. So what I do in my interview is I've stopped giving a presentation and I've started doing more of a consultation. The thing that I found out is we as agents, a lot of us are praise junkies. We like to tell people about the awards that we've won and how many times we've been top producer in our office, and those things are great. But at the end of the day, the client, that's not necessarily something that they really care as much about. What I found that they care about 4 things. Number 1 is, what do we do better than anybody else to get their house sold for the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time? Number 2, when is this happening? So what is the timeline, right? And what is the process like? What can I expect that's going to happen in the future that I can understand now so that I'm not surprised 2 months down the road? Number three is who are we? And when I say we, I'm very intentional with that statement. It is not just, who is Bob or who is Lydia. It is, who is Peter and who is Coldwell Banker Professionals, or who is, Century 21 Professionals, and have we successfully done this before? And the reason I don't know, again, I don't know what the split that we have in this meeting of new and experienced agents, but if you are a brand new agent, you have not successfully done this before, but your company has. You have, depending on your side of the house, either 50 or 117 years of combined successful sales experience from your brand. Not to mention hundreds of combined years from the leadership team, from your specific office manager, the entire team around you. And then number four is how to make adjustments and corrections if this doesn't sell immediately. I never want to sit in front of anybody on like I said, for me, I do seller checkups on Tuesdays at 11 normally. I never want to sit in front of them and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I don't know why your house isn't selling. We always want to look at the adjustments and corrections that we may need to do. And we'll talk about that later. All right, so question one is, what do we do better than anybody else? This isn't what we do. That's a big distinction. And when I'm going into a competitive listing, I want to lay that out very, very early. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, just so you know, the other agent may come in and tell you that they're going to be, on Zillow and on Realtor.com and all the other, these are IDX websites, and they're going to, put a sign in your, great. Those are the things that every single realtor in the market does. Here's what we do on top of that. So I'm not even going to spend my time addressing those. You know what? I'll let the other agent tell you the things that every agent in the market does. Let's tell you what we do over and above. So the first thing, and I'll be honest, I don't think this is an updated footprint because the footprint just changed last week. We have a huge footprint. I think it's like 500 square miles. It's 24 offices, 800 professional agents. Now you may ask, why does this matter to a seller? Number one, it's name recognition. And number two, we incentivize all of our agents, which, by the way, if you are not aware, you can market to your own company agents before you market to the public. We incentivize our own agents to sell our listings, right? If you haven't capped, you get an extra couple percent if you sell an HRC listing. So if I know that I've got 800 of my professional colleagues that are also on the lookout to help me sell that house, that's a bonus before I even put the listing on the market. One other disclaimer here too. Every material that I used is company material. It is in your Moxie Present. If you look at so if you're C21, the Moxie Present, I think it's called the C21 sales packet or sales presentation, something like that.
Peter.
Yes.
Can we interrupt you?
Yes, please.
So you just said some stuff and I need you to go in more in depth in that.
Happy to.
How we incentivize our agents and what we're doing better than the other agents. Mm-hmm. That's very important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this whole section is going to be talking about what we do better than everybody else. So that was the incentivizing our agents is only the first point of that. Does that help? We're not moving on from that.
So you're saying you're going to go into depth in it right now?
Yes, that's only the very first thing we do.
Okay, great.
All of these things, I'll tell you when we move on from that. But all these things are going to be what we do better than anybody else. And then just a disclaimer, the marketing material is pulled from either the Century 21 or the Coldwell Banker Moxie listing presentations. Ask your branch manager how to get into that. They all have, I looked through both of them pretty extensively, and I pulled examples from each, but you have equivalencies on both sides of the house. So whether you're Coldwell Banker or C21, it might look a smidge different, but you have all of this. So the first thing that we address is, just like if you go to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or Little Caesars, any franchise, you're going to have a level of expectation of experience. So if you went and you had a Big Mac and your Big Mac was only one patty at one McDonald's and it was 3 patties at another, everything would be out of whack. So one of the things that we push with our agents is having a specified, written, and consistent marketing plan of action. And that plan of action may differ from agent to agent, but I think it does need to be written, consistent, and professional. So having that laid out for your seller, I think, helps. The next thing we do is we put our effort where the buyers are, right? So if I want to go fishing, Like, I'm not going to go fish in a cornfield, right? Like, I want to go where, and even within the lake, right? Some parts of the lake might have, stumps and weed cover for the fish to hide in, and some might not. I want to go where the fish are. So we're going to put our effort into the places where the fish are here. So this is a statistic from NAR in 2023. This is where new home buyers start their new searches. So if you notice, one of the very first things they do is they're still starting with their buyer's agent. So one of the things we want to address with our homeowners is how to sell to the home to other agents. We want to make sure, and so I go through this, and I'll go through these point by point, but we want to make sure that we're putting our efforts proportionally to where people are finding them. So if most of our money is going to magazine and newspaper print advertising, well, we might have things a little bit backwards. So I'm going to dive into each of these. And that's the CB side. They call it 360 property marketing. What we do is I give them a quick overview and then we dive in. So I talk about that. Number one, we've got, I call it, B2C promotion, where we're promoting directly to the consumer. And then we're also doing more of a B2B, promotion, where we're promoting to other agents. Other agents are, and especially if you're having trouble with buyer agency conversations with your sellers, talking about the importance of promoting that listing and making that listing appealing to buyer agents, I think, is very important. So the very first thing that we start off with is we have very, very short attention spans, yes or yes. And we have 6 to 8 seconds to form an opinion of your house, whether that is online or in person. So I talk a little bit right in the beginning about that impressions matter. They matter online, they matter in person. They matter when you go to the market to make sure everything is set up. And as we know, one of the first things that they see is our photography. I have professional photography on every single one of my listings. I have listings that I probably have spent more in advertising than I almost made, and maybe that wasn't the greatest idea. But what we want to have is, I never want seller one to talk to seller two and say, oh, Peter did this for your house, but not this. We want to have a consistency in marketing. Now, I understand that there are some agents that have a menu of services. I think that you then need to handle that a little bit differently. But as long as you are communicating that properly with the customer and with your seller, that's all right. I don't use a menu of services. For me, it's an all-encompassing package. So you may need to edit that as you will. I also explain, does anybody explain to their clients how Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com and all those, I'm just going to use Zillow as kind of the colloquial term for all of them. Does anyone explain how those work to their clients? I explain to them that you don't pay to use Zillow. Zillow deals in data, just like Facebook and Instagram. And the more clicks that somebody gets, the more information they can sell to a Zillow Premier agent. So the more attention our listing gets, the more Zillow is going to push us. So part of our job is to make sure that Zillow pushes us. So part of that is professional photography. Part of it is having professional videography. The NAR stat says 400% view increase as of 2020 or 21 with video attached listings. The other thing is you want to make sure that within that 6 to 8 second time window that you've hooked them. So I know that you've seen a listing that has 27 pictures of their landscaping. And I know it's very tempting for a seller who has spent a lot of their time in their garden to say, I really want to highlight the landscaping. Great. But your average buyer is not as thrilled with that. We want to get to the meat. So like for me, I show the one front elevation that I'm required in RealComp. And then I dive right into whatever the selling feature is of the house. So if it's got it, so we know what sells houses, right? Kitchens, bathrooms, primary suites, finished basements. We're diving right into those. Maybe it's got a pool and it's the middle of summer. Maybe it's lakefront. Maybe it's got acreage and we're going to show the elevation. Whatever that is, we're diving right in. So I want the average goldfish to be able to look at my listing and say, that makes sense for me to go see that property. The second thing, we kind of already mentioned video. I think you need 2 videos. I think that you need a virtual property tour, which most of your photographers will do, or the marketing department will do if you've got a marketing subscription. And then I also like having some kind of cinematic video or some kind of walkthrough video or some kind of agent promotional video. And that can be as extensive as having your photographer like mine shoots a cinematic walkthrough. It can be as simple as you taking your phone and And I actually like to do this, by the way, at the listing appointment. And I'll take my phone and put it in front of my face as I'm like, maybe I'm putting in a step in sign and saying, just doing a quick intro and saying, hey, everybody, this is Peter. 123 Main Street is coming up into the market. Be ready for it. It's coming in under $500,000 and it's in this super desirable neighborhood. That does two things. Number one, it's going to start getting attention to the listing. And number two, it shows your seller that even before the listing goes live, you're already putting marketing attention to it. Sorry, I'm gonna check my time. It's a little bit different here. All right. The next thing I think, if we could totally get away from sharing Zillow listings, Realtor.com listings, those web addresses onto our social media, I think that it would behoove all of us. The best way to do this is have a single property website or some kind of tracking driven website. So like the listing on coldwellbanker.com, the listing on coldwellbankerprofessionals.com. Again, if your photographer creates a single property website, sharing that out, number one, lets you track the buyer traffic. And number two, it keeps the attention from the buyer on that website instead of pushing them like Zillow pushes them. Hey, if you don't like this one, let's show you the next one. The next thing is web traffic. And these are the same on both sides of the house. These are not IDX feeds. I already mentioned how I highlight those. These are the websites that we use separately. By the way, you guys, I think that doing your own advertising, your own SEO is great, but we are part of, the biggest real estate company, I believe, in the world with Anywhere and some of the biggest brands with Century 21 and Coldwell Banker. They have got people that are way smarter than I am, who know way more about technology and SEO and all these things to know where to put these ads. So it's hundreds of websites that are separate from the IDX feeds. And also you've got additional tools within Back At You. And I know at least on the CB side within HomeSpotter Boost that you can actually push this even more if you'd like. And if you've never created a Back At You ad, it takes, somebody can correct, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and takes almost no technological knowledge. Very, very easy to do. The next thing that we talk about is social media. I think that if your listings are not being pushed on social media, you are actively missing out. Not only that, but they need to be mobile and mobile optimized. So if you can't view your listing properly on a phone in a tiny little screen and convey the information that you need to appropriately, we got to take a look at your advertising. So this is, and again, these numbers are very, very similar on the C21 side, but 500 million media impressions, hundreds of millions of engagements and link clicks and video views and followers. Those are, again, things that's not necessarily, and because I've gotten questions on this. Now, those are not necessarily pushing one specific listing, but they are pushing back to the sites, which are going to push your listings. The next thing that we talk about is, we kind of mentioned B2B marketing. 88% of people are still relying on their agents. So, and I think it's no secret to say that COVID changed the way that we buy houses. Yes. People don't necessarily want to see as many houses. They want to make sure that the houses that they see, at least with my buyers, the houses that they see are good fits. They don't want to waste time, and they want to find out as much information as they can from their agent and from their couch as they can before they actually go and get in their car. And this also works if you're doing relocation or people that are, out-of-state buyers, out-of-state investors. They're relying on their agents. So what do we need to do? We need to make our listings attractive to other agents. I know you've probably shown a house that the agent did not make it very agent-friendly. Maybe online showing time wasn't set up. Maybe you could only show it from, Wednesday from 1 to 2. Maybe they didn't include a floor plan. Maybe they put their pictures so out of whack and didn't label anything that you have no idea where anything is in the house. I think being very intentional about how we set up our listing, making sure that you have, I like to have a feature sheet. What's been updated in the last 10 years? What about in addition to the seller's disclosure, anything that they might be able to tell us about mechanicals that might not be in the seller's disclosures? Did they do windows 3 years ago? Did they do, they put in a new dishwasher 2 years ago? I think those things are great. Hey, maybe they put in a new patio. Those are really good information to include with your listing. As I mentioned, I like a floor plan with dimensions. I think it's very important, especially if you've got an older house. Bedrooms may be a little bit smaller. If you've got somebody that, hey, I know I got to put a king bed in here, we know we've got to have a little bit bigger bedroom. And then I also think having some kind of video tour or labeling of the layout is good too. So how do we get this in front of the agents? Number one is email marketing. So you can have within Moxie and Press, you can actually send out an email blast to the agents around your listing. What I like to do is actually go into RealComp and grab a list of all the agents that have sold in the area, and then send to them because I know that they've done business in that area. The next thing I like to do is I still like to do direct mail marketing. So I've taken this blend, in my opinion, of the new school. What are we doing that California was doing, that New York was doing, that hasn't necessarily made its way to every agent? So some of that is the really high-end SEO that C21 and CoBanker are doing, some of the social media marketing, and then also what are the things that are tried and true that we've been doing for 30, 40, 50 years that still sell homes? So direct targeted mail marketing, which again is free to you from the company, I think is very important. A while ago, it was where you had junk mail in your mailbox and nothing in your email, and you were excited when you got an email and not so excited to go to your mailbox. And now kind of the other way around. Getting a physical piece of mail, I think, is a little bit more exciting to folks. And then also having, for either door knocking or in the property, having some kind of physical high-end brochure, which again, you can make within the CoBanker systems, to have somebody who walks into the property walk out with something tangible. Then the last part of the marketing is talking about how we stage. So it may be that you're bringing in an outside stager. It may be that you are giving them tips. For me, I do an inside walk around and we stage together. We do actually 2 stages of staging. We do, here's what you need to do for photos, and then here's what you need to do for every subsequent showing. But I always say it's like a first date or first kiss, you only get one. And like we said about first impressions, you only might have 6 to 10 seconds for somebody to find out if they're going to like your home. We also talk to them about broker and consumer open houses. So what is the benefit of those? What are the risks? What are the downsides? So we kind of give them statistically, open houses are not the most effective at direct sales. Only I think it's about 0.5% to actually sell directly from an open house. But the yard sign traffic, the extra traffic that you're given on Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com, all those things can be big benefits from consumer open houses. And then there's also benefits of broker open houses, having other agents through, not only for their buyer list, but also to give you feedback on the listing itself. Any questions on kind of section 1 and what we do better than anybody else? I know I try and give the baseline of what the company is doing basically for you, and then what you can do on top. Any questions? Am I missing chat? Anything like that?
Nothing in the chat.
All right. Good. I know if you saw this in person, it's a little bit less interactive on Zoom, but it's partially because I can't see a lot of you. So my question 2 for them. Where do we need, so what is the timeline and where do we need in the process? Now, if you've been paying attention to these questions, one thing that you'll notice is that what price should my house sell is not one of the questions that we ask or that we answer. So the reason for that is, number one, that price is a function of timing. So if you need to sell tomorrow, your price needs to be different than if you don't have anywhere to go and you need to sell in 6 months. The other thing is, at least most of my listing appointments are happening well in advance of the listing going live. So 3 to 4 weeks. And I don't know what may happen in that 3 to 4 weeks. So we do address price in the listing process and in our listing consultation. But I give a range. I do go through some comparables and I give a range and I say, hey, as long as this is an acceptable range, we're going to reevaluate this 24 to 48 hours before we go on market. Because I don't want to go on market with inaccurate or outdated information. And one of my comps that's active or pending might have closed or gone pending. And so we want to make sure we have the most accurate data. So the other thing that this helps avoid is, well, I hired XY agent because of the price they gave me. What I would like to do is separate entirely the hiring of an agent from the price decision. Another thing that you'll notice in there that I didn't include as a question is commission. And the reason for that is my entire commission strategy is show them so much value that their thought is, well, yeah, of course that they're worth their commission. So let's not make it a question. Now, if they address it, and again, this isn't a class on addressing commission objections, but my whole thought is the best way to address commission objections is to not have them in the first place. And your average buyer, so there's about 10% of the population that they're just going to go for the expensive option, right? If they can buy a luxury car, they're going to do it. If they can shop at, and this is going to be terrible because I don't know luxury stores, but you know, the Gucci or Coach, whatever, right? The luxury brands, great. There's going to be some people that they're going to go for the cheapest option, but the vast majority of folks, they're going to go for what the value is. Right? Hey, I see the value in, and maybe that is a luxury item, or maybe it's not a luxury item, but they're going to go with what their perception of value is. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our value proposition is above what our cost perception is. Because if our value perception is below our cost, well, they're going to question cost. If our value is above it, they're not going to question cost because they're seeing the value for what they get. So the questions that we ask, we're going to ask the where, when, why, who, how, all those questions. And remember, a great percentage of the talking should be done by the seller. A lot of what we should be doing is asking questions. It very much matters in these situations who says it and how it's said. So there's a huge difference between me saying, you know, Lydia, your house should sell for $250,000 versus me saying, well, Lydia, I've shown you a couple of these comparables. Some are a little bit nicer than your house. Some are a little bit less. Based on those, where do you think your home should be priced for the quickest and easiest sale? It's a little bit of a different approach. So where do we need to be? So we're establishing in this question 2, we're establishing motivation, and we're going to lean on that motivation if we need to later. So we need to be in Dallas. When do we need to be there? Well, I'd really like to be turning, and I asked the question, if you could wave your magic wand, when would you be turning the key in the new house? January 1st, or well, now we're into November. February 1st. Great. Why are we moving? And that might be, there might be more than one reason for that. There might be, and that motivation could be very, you know, it could be anything from jobs to, you know, to the 4 Ds, the death, divorce, forget the other 2. That's great. But marriage, you know, growth of family, any of those things. And the reason that I want to have a really good understanding of these is they're going to drive every decision that the seller makes. And our job is not to make decisions for the sellers. It's to understand what is in the driver's seat of their mind, what is causing them to make the decisions, give them the information to make good, educated decisions. The fourth part of that is we want to explain to them and showing them average days on market and contract timelines. So, hey, in this area, your average home is selling in 22 days. Average contract timeline is approximately 45 days. So we can work backwards. We need to be in Dallas by February 1st. Well, here's February 1st. Take 45 days. That's December 15th. Our average contract time is 15 days. We need to be on the market December 1st. We can work backwards, which also means your home needs to be ready November 25th for me to get my photographers, videographers, advertising, everything ready. So sometimes when you work backwards, it helps you work forwards. And then a quick walkthrough of the list of contract to close, especially if somebody hasn't closed a home in a long time, reminding them about inspections, appraisals, underwriting, title, all those things. I always say the real estate transaction is a roller coaster. I can't flatten the curve of the roller coaster, but what I can do is strap you in and tell you where to hang on. Any questions on the timeline? I know that's probably something, if you're an experienced agent, you've talked a lot about.
Still nothing there.
All right. The question 3, which goes into winning the listing, is who are we and how have we done it before? So this does not need to be, like I mentioned, an expose of all your awards. Now, if you want to include that in the pre-listing package, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with talking yourself up a little bit. But this entire consultation is designed to be less than 60 minutes. So about 12 minutes of it should be talking about what we do to market the home, which is what you notice is about what I spent talking to you guys about it. Another 5 minutes to 10 minutes is talking about the timing. About 1 to 2 minutes is this question 3 about who are we and what have we done it before. A few minutes about question 4, and then we go through the house again and we take kind of our tour, doing staging and talking comps and all that. So I think it should be short and sweet, maybe a quick recap of your experience. So like for me, if I had to say this in like 20 seconds, I'd say, hey, I've been in the industry for approximately 10 years. Most of those years I've been in the top 15% of Coldwell Banker sales associates internationally. My specialties are in corporate military relocation, rural properties, and probate and trust. And I've overseen something like 700 real estate transactions so far in my career. Now, what if I don't have experience? If you're brand new to the business, or you're part-time, just getting full-time, something like that, lean on your team. So even if you haven't sold a lot of houses, hey, your brand has been around for a long time. My spiel with Coldwell Banker is 2 global pandemics, 2 global financial crises, 2 world wars, and we've sold houses every day through every single one of those. Century 21, it's going to be very, very similar, right? Hey, you've been around for 24 presidents and 50 years, right? Lean on that. Also lean on your local team. Hey, I'm new to the business, but I've got an experienced managing broker that's going to be watching every move I make, that has years of experience, and they're going to help make sure that you're getting the full experience. I do a quick overview of the brand. I just kind of gave you mine, just a couple of sentences. Most people will be familiar with the brand walking in. If they're not, both Moxie Present presentations have some quotables that you can use. Hey, this is how many agents we have. This is how much production we do. Locally, we do about $2 billion in sales volume. So I always say we're not a fly-by-night organization here. And then I do what's called success story time. And again, like I've mentioned, I like to talk backwards. And so what I'll do is I'll give a recap of either property that I just sold, or maybe if you're new to the business, tell a story, talk to another agent in your office, talk to a managing broker, get another story like this that you can tell. So, hey, we just sold 123 Main Street for $500,000. And you know what? It was only listed at $475,000. And how we did this was we had 3 offers, and those offers were driven by 23 showings. And those showings were driven by 10,000 online views, staging the property, prepping the property correctly, using the methods that I mentioned in step 1. So working backwards from the result through the process can be very helpful. I don't necessarily tell negative stories. Sometimes I can say, hey, now what we want to avoid is, here's a property that sold, it took a long time, they weren't responsive on, so you can edit that story time depending on what your client type is, which I didn't mention this previously. I forgot to. One of the things I will also do in addition to researching the client is research in addition to researching the agent, is researching the client. If you have not done a DISC profile on yourself, I would encourage you to do that. Because not only if you understand yourself, it will help you just generally, but also then you can understand how you interact with your clients. So I'm a very high I in that DISC profile. If I'm walking into a client who's an engineer, or someone who is, maybe they're an auto exec and they're a very high D, so they're a driver, I'm going to adjust my listing presentation to know and to meet him where he is or she is, instead of having them try and meet me where I am. Maybe I have someone who's very analytical. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to grab as much statistical information as I can. If I know that somebody is, especially if they've mentioned a time frame for my listing appointment, I make sure I keep that. So we're going to adjust. We're going to be a little bit of a chameleon to our client. Here we go. Question 4 is, how do we actually make sure that this gets sold, especially if the listing is sitting? So I use this, I call it the funnel. It just looks like an upside down pyramid. And the reason it looks like an upside down pyramid is because there's more of the things on the top than things on the bottom. And no buyer can skip any of these. So they have to go through every single one of these. And then this is kind of our if we were the house doctor, this is our diagnostic chart for the sale. So there are how many closings that we have in this house? We don't have 2, at least if they're completed. We have one closing. Now we might have one contract. We might have, I just had an agent in our office that had 3 contracts on a property that before they were able to sell it. We might have more than that. We might have more than one offer. We're probably gonna have multiple showings. We're gonna have multiple people houses that save or try and set up a showing, and then we're gonna have lots of people that view. So what we look at is, and I like to use a couple of metrics. I like to use within CV Desk and within C21 Online, there's something called List Track, which can help you look at views. I also actually like to use the Zillow listing. I know that's not super popular. I just think I understand their numbers. I look at the views and save numbers. And then I also look at the real comp hit count numbers, which will show you how many, it shows you how wide of an audience you have. So if you check your real comp hit counters and you only have, it only matched 10 buyers, or it matched 1,000 buyer portals, you can kind of understand where you are as far as how desirable your property is. So what we can do then is start to understand a diagnosis. So let's say that we go on and we have 5,000 views and we have 500 saves and we have 2 showings. Well, why is that? So we know that they like 5,000 people liked it enough to view it. 500 of them liked it enough to save it. But why aren't they coming into the property? It can only be a couple things. Either after seeing it, the price was just too high for them even to come take a look. Or once they got into the listing, they found out something that they didn't like about the home. Same question for, we've got, this is probably the most common one, is we've got 20 showings. Every buyer feedback says the house is priced right, but no offers. Well, we have one of 2 things. Either this wasn't priced totally right. So remember that a lot of agents will coach their clients, and I know we're not doing this, but a lot of agents will coach their clients, hey, if you can't offer full price, just don't offer. Or it's something that they've seen in the house that has turned them off from offering. But having this, I actually write this out for my sellers, and having them understand this, there's always going to be something that I can point to when we sit down, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about this. But when I sit down with them, like I said, for me on a Tuesday, I go through the numbers. Hey, here's the views, here's the saves, here's the amount of showings, here's the feedback. Do we have any offers? And then we can start to diagnose. And as part of that diagnostic process, there are 3 P's to sell any house. I know that there's actually 4 conditions that you need to meet, but the market is not something that we can change, so I don't address it. Because we do need to take the market into account, but these are the things that we can change. So the very first one is promotion. I always say this is our job. And that's the reason that I handle that in question 1 is this is what we do to promote the house. And I like to track that. How many people have actually seen it, right? How many postcards went out? How many online views we have? How many video views we have? And this is the exact conversation I have with any seller when I'm going to have what really is a price improvement discussion, but it's a listing adjustment conversation. So the first thing we'll say is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we promoted the house. We've blown this up. Not only do we have all the online advertising that's pushed from the MLSs and the IDX feeds, all the things every agent would do. Plus, we sent out the postcards. Plus, we did the online advertising and the social media and the video and this and this and this. We've had 10,000 people see your house. How many more do you think we need to see it before we can make an educated decision on what we need to do to our home? The second thing is presentation. How does the house actually look? That is something that we can adjust for. And remember, if this is a 3-legged stool, if one of these legs is off, the stool is going to wobble, right? And wobbly stools don't sell houses. So if our promotion, we cut a couple inches off that leg, and we're using Kodak disposable cameras from 1997, and we have one picture, and like our thumb is like this, and we've got one picture of the outside and 3 pictures of the backyard, and then 1 picture of the half bath. That's not going to promote the house well. Same thing with presentation. If the house doesn't present well, it smells like pets. There's clutter all over. Any of these legs is going to affect the other. Right? So you chop a couple inches off of presentation, it's wobbly. How do we fix it? The third is price. So the last thing I want to do is, before I touch my seller's pocketbook, I want to let them know that I'm going to make sure the other 2 legs of the stool are sturdy first. So before we start figuring out that the leg price is too long, is there a way that, do we need to shim up the promotion leg or the presentation leg? So based on feedback, based on numbers, maybe I need to change my advertising. Maybe I do need to have more people see it. I'll be honest, this happened in my own business where we had a listing come on. We were bound by time because of a contingency, and I didn't have all my ads ready to go, but we had to put it on the market, and we went off to a slow start. And the very first thing I talked to my client about is he said, do we need to adjust price? I said, no. I said, first, let me adjust promotion. Presentation. Do we need to have the carpets cleaned? Do we need to make sure that the kids' toys are all put away and boxed up and everyone's out of the house? Do we need to have a cleaning service come in? Do we need to make sure, by the way, this is a little one, that all the light bulbs are the same tone, the same color tone? Do we need to make sure that the house has good curb appeal and makes a good first impression? And then we can talk price. And the reason that I go in that order is a lot of agents have one tool in their bag, and it's price reduction. Now, we all know that probably price is the solution, but it might not be. And so let's take price as the last option. So the exact conversation I'll have is, like I mentioned, here's the promotion we've done. 10,000 people have seen the house. 8 of them have shown it. They all said it seems fine. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we know that the promotion has shown itself to be working. 10,000 people have seen your home. We know, because I know that you keep your house up. We went through this. We staged it properly. It smells good. It looks good. All the lights are on. All the windows are open. We know it's presenting right. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what else do you think, based on these 3 principles, is the only thing that we might need to make an adjustment on to make sure that you get to Dallas by February 1st? And that's where it comes in, that it matters who says it. And, well, I think the only thing that's left is price. To address, I'll address the disc thing in 1 second there, Dave. So this is kind of what I go through. That's the conversation I have. And then I will be happy to take any questions on it, but just a couple of these things. Like I mentioned, on those 3 Ps, I draw the stool out for the clients. You guys got lucky that I went and found on Google a picture of the stool. Normally, which my toddler's a better artist than I am, I will draw a stool just with the little legs. Show them. Showing is better than telling. The next thing, so prove your promotion. Like we said, use List Track, use your showing time listing reports, use the online websites, and then complement the presentation. No one wants to hear, now there might be room for improvement on the presentation, but make sure they understand that you are not degrading or denigrating their home, that you understand that this was somewhere they either lived or they took pride in, and that you are not trying to come in and kind of tear the place apart. I'm also very cautious about that when it comes to staging. And I let them know, hey, by the way, there's things I would change in my own home if I staged it, right? We go through and we talk about, hey, what are the things, like I take family pictures down. We take down religious iconography. We take down anything actually that might be very trendy decor. We want to make the house as much of an vanilla ice cream cone as we can, so that when they walk in, that someone can view it as their own home instead of yours. So I always say those things. I say, hey, I love your decor. I'm sure a buyer would too, but we don't want them thinking, boy, the seller has great decor. We want them thinking, boy, this would look great as my home. And then we always ask what's left. So we always let them say, here's what price should be, or here's what the adjustment needs to be. Because like I said, it really matters who says it. Any additional questions? I'll answer this one from David. So the disc profile is, you can just do a quick Google, as far as there's a bunch of free tests, but it helps you understand your personality type. So, and I'm going to botch the different types, but it's a circle graph, and it will let you know which of these personality types you fit into. So there's drivers, there's
influencers.
And then what's that? The S is, I forget, but it's basically there's drivers. There are the influencers, or people they're the party people. Then there are the folks that are the analyzers. And then there are also folks that are going to be Well, I forget what the C is, Darwin. I'd have to look.
I was gonna say another one is the four personalities. DISC is the one that I think people know the most, but simple definitions: drivers, analyticals, amiables,
Yes,
and
amiables. That's right.
expressives.
Yes.
So those are another way of saying the same thing as the DISC principle. And by the way, David, DISC, if you were to go and look that up, DISC.
And if you're going to do that test, also look into the way that they relate to each other. So again,
Peter,
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So I am asking this question for myself, but I think I texted a few other agents and they weren't aware of it either. So you mentioned that we are incentivize our agents to sell our listings. And some people don't know what that means. So can you explain in detail what that means? Like because I've never heard of it and I didn't know.
I'll let Darwin answer that.
I knew Lydia wasn't going to let you slide on that. So Lydia, what we have is Blue Program.
Is this something new or is it only with Coldwell Banker and it's not coming over to?
It's throughout. It is throughout. And as long as you haven't capped out, the simplest part is sell a Coldwell Banker Professionals listing or a Century 21 Professionals listing, and you can get an additional 5% on your split.
So you're saying this is new?
Nope.
How long has it been around?
Since you became a part of the Professionals family through HRC Realty.
So now I'm thinking, have I sold one of our listings? Do I have to get an additional check?
Michelle looks at these things.
It would automatically be right as part of your calculations in your check.
Okay.
Yep. You don't have to do anything. Yep. Michelle takes care of it. Yeah.
So it's 5% additional. So is that why? So then, which means that whenever I get a list, whenever I get a listing, I should make sure everybody in the organization knows about it. How do I do that?
Well, that's one that we've started sending out to, I believe it goes out to every manager every week and
on Mondays
within the company.
Yep.
So that's why she does that.
Yep.
Okay.
It's so that it's so that our agents can see each other's listings first. Now, if you wanted to, let's say that you were going to, Lydia, what office are you in?
Troy.
Let's say that you had a listing up in Clarkston. Now, what I would do is you can.
Let's say I have a listing in Farmington Hills.
Then what you would want to do is I would get in touch with, and now that you're going out of my area here, but so Farmington Hills. Now I would want to get in touch with C21 Livonia, CVP Northville, and CVP Plymouth, and pass that out to their agent.
Hold on. Northville, Plymouth, and who else?
And C21 Livonia.
Those three, okay.
If I'm reading my map right.
Yes, you are.
Northville, Plymouth, and Livonia. Okay.
That area is not my specialty.
Am I personally doing this myself, or am I having my admin person do it for me?
I mean,
that would be yourself.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and what I do is I like to just, because we have the distribution lists, I like to just give a quick call or email to that office and just say, hey, you mind sharing this at your sales meeting?
Got it.
You do upcoming listings, or you mind sending a quick message out? You don't want to overload. If you're putting a listing up in Farmington, you don't necessarily want to send it up to, the agents up in Lapeer.
But I might.
What can happen, we found sometimes it gets to be, we don't want to overload anybody's inbox too. So I like to be a little bit more targeted with it.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Because otherwise, we like I said, we do $2 billion every year. All we'd be doing in our email inboxes would be seeing the listings.
Matter of fact, I've got numerous agents blocked because they send me every listing that they ever take. So I don't even look if they pop up in front of me anyway. It just click. Delete's a really easy thing to do. So I like Peter's thought of being more targeted, catch my eye quickly, and that way you're going to get higher level exposure. So a smaller amount might give you more exposure.
And that's why, Lydia, I like, and I kind of mentioned this, if you go in and you do a search for every listing that's sold around that property, let's say within 5 miles or 3 miles, depending on the density in real comp, and you export that list, you export it as third-party residential, you can actually get the information for every single agent that was on the buy and list side of those transactions. And you can market to them, which I think is a very powerful thing to do.
I'm sorry, would you say that again, please?
Yeah, so you can actually use RealComp, and you can download a list of if you did your search, let's say within a mile, every property that comes up, you can export that, and you can actually find the information of the agent that sold that property and reach out to them. You know, hey Lydia, I know that you sold 123 Main Street. I've got 324 Banana Street that's up for sale. You know, hey, I saw that you had multiple offers. Would you mind sharing that information or would you mind getting in touch with those agents that offered and letting them know that I've got a listing coming up?
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate
I really
it.
like doing that.
Okay.
Any other questions about this, about either winning the listing or about making, having those price conversations or any of that? Wonderful.
Who's got the first question? There's got to be more.
And I got everything in without going over, Darwin.
That's awesome. And I don't think you were talking too quick today.
I tried to slow down, go to 0.8 speed instead of.
There you go. Wasn't at warp speed today.
Yeah.
So yeah, great job, my friend. Really aligns with everything that we've taught before, that follows along with what we've done in boot camp, Top Gun, and so on. It's really a matter of getting out there and talking to people, because you see, if we're not talking to people, we don't even have to worry about having a competitive situation. We won't have any. And I've had a number of people asking, what's the big secret, or I've missed out because. And remember this, if we try to find the circumstance, and I'll put my hand to this because you've all seen it before, there's that one pointing at something, but there's the three that are pointing back at you. And it's that person is what's the problem. Now, exactly what is that issue? Well, you don't know. But I can tell you most of the time, we're either not in action, meaning we're not doing things that will get people to come and talk to us so that we can go have these interviews, or we're simply not talking to the biggest part of our business, which is the sphere of influence, the people that we know. So those are the real keys. And with that, I'm showing 12:58. I will let you know again that the remainder of the year, we're doing deep dives. It'll be about a 1-hour presentation. Next week, you guys are stuck with me again, but it's on buyers and how do we sell the value? How do we get to the point where there's value, to where, Peter, you said it today, they won't ask you, they'll want to sign a contract and they'll want to pay you because the value is there. So that's coming up. Along with that, we have our own Jay, who's going to be presenting on artificial intelligence, how to use that in your business. And Paul Wolfert is going to be back to talk about using the social media, YouTube, videos, to be able to get yourself out there and be able to promote yourself. And he's our top guy on the gold side. So can't wait for you to be able to hit that. Peter, one last question there. Will you be sending out your presentation?
The slide deck? Yeah, I can send it up. I'll send it to Darwin and he can.
And we'll get it distributed to your managers. So yeah, what you'll want to do, Adriana, is just check with Scott or Sally on that. And we'll make sure that we get it to you. Can ask them and they'll make sure that they get it to you. Gosh, outside of that, we'll see you next Tuesday. Know that if anybody wants, we're going through the boot camp series. It's a virtual boot camp, 1 to 2:30. Tomorrow, we are doing expireds and for sale by owners. If that's something you want to refresher on, you want to check out what's going on with that, feel free to join me. Your managers will have the link for the virtual boot camp. I hope you have a great one, and we'll see you next week. Have a great
Wonderful.
one, everybody.
Thank you for having me, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic job, my friend. Well done.
Thank you, Peter and Darwin.
You need me to hold on, Darwin?
I think, yeah, no, I think that was just a thank you. So
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Thank
we're good
you.
to go,
It was
my bud.
great.
Have a great one, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
All right, buddy. We'll see you. Well,